Following program are pre-recorded.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bachman. I'm with Kevin Oberlein of Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drug Store. And Kevin, you brought in a guest this morning.
I did. We want to welcome
Big
Tana Trotter from Proximal 50.
Proximal 50.
Yes.
Now, you are the owner of Proximal 50, which for those that may not be familiar, a little different take on healthcare. We're going to get into that here in a few minutes, but welcome to the program. A little background about you. What's your history?
Yeah, so I am a physical therapist, but I grew up in Kildare, North Dakota, so out in western North Dakota. Played a lot of sports out there, which got me started into exercise.
All right, what was your best sport?
I feel like it was pretty equal basketball, volleyball.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'd put my focus into one, put my focus into another. I'd say they were pretty even. So, but that kind of got me going early on in the exercise world and seeing how putting work into that led to results on the court. And so that was always really part of my life. And then played a little bit of college basketball as well out at UMary. And so transitioning into that, I'm not an athlete anymore, but I should still probably exercise phase of life, made me force myself into personal training.
And that's hard for a lot of people.
It's huge, and it's something that I definitely is in my 5-year goal that's a huge transition period of that identity crisis that I've never had to actually work out on my own.
I can eat anything I want. I'm all good.
Yep, it is a huge thing, and I've seen it with so many past patients or friends or any of that, and I think I knew myself well enough to know that I probably needed to force it upon myself, and that's honestly where personal training started, was that'll keep me active. It's a flexible schedule. During college, let's do that, and it kind of blossomed from there.
Well, and there's kind of two pieces to that. There's two components because, so for example, and Kevin and I have talked about this before, my case, shoulder injury, and nursed it through 2 years of college playing football, and okay, I'm done. And then couldn't work out because of the shoulder injury, which was a different component. But just everybody in their everyday life without an injury, that's a hard turnover.
It is. It's really hard to, I think there's a huge misunderstanding that as the owner of a gym, I wake up every morning just like counting down the seconds till I exercise. And that's not the case. I dread every single
so you're like the rest of us.
Yes. And that's a very
it's cold out this morning. I drag myself down. I got to go too.
Yeah, back when I used to do like health fairs and stuff, people would walk by and like, ooh, the fitness people and stuff. And I'm like, trust me, but I like who I am when I do it. So then but I have to force myself. 95% of how I work out right now is in front of a class because I know I'm not going to prioritize it with everything else going on in my life.
But for most people, it's a little scary because, they go, oh, the health people. Because for somebody walking into a gym, that's why we see those fail rates after New Year's resolutions all the time. They get in there and they're not comfortable in there.
And a lot of that is just the whole industry itself is kind of geared towards being, that superior person that's fit and strong and muscular and can wear anything and do all of that. And that's not really the picture of health.
Can we just get back to healthy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's just be healthy.
That's really honestly what's motivated me to even open the doors at Proximal. So,
because that's kind of my motivation, is especially as I've gotten a little older, Kev, I go look back at some of the decisions I made and went, yeah, that was a bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
I probably should have done that a little different so I could be healthier as I get a little older. But we all do that. So it's kind of like
moderation.
The people that quit smoking. Mm-hmm. There's never a bad time to quit smoking.
No,
there's never a bad time to start going to the gym and whatever that exercise regimen looks like.
Yes.
There's never a bad time to start being healthy because it's not about, well, I want to get buff and look good at the beach. No, I want to be healthy.
Right. Well, and even a lot of times I have to tell people we're still kind of in the first generation or two of a fitness industry. Really, 50 years ago, there weren't gyms, we were just more active. We were, our jobs were
I
more,
think it was that little the little cutout ad on the back of a comic book. That was kind of where it.
Right.
'Cause I remember that. I'm like, oh, you can be that or that. And it's like,
but maybe 30,
that was fitness back
maybe
in
30 years ago you could have been a gym member. But so a lot of people come in thinking they're failures because they don't know how to exercise. And I'm like, well, really, it's still a pretty new concept if we think about it.
Well, and for those that were high school athletes or college athletes, that was the gym membership. It was part of that workout regimen of being part of a team.
And if you're even older than that, maybe it was on the farm, the ranch, your job,
that's a workout.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like we didn't need dumbbells to keep moving and keep our strength. Our lives just kind of did it. And as that's evolved, so a lot of times it's just taking the people are ashamed that they don't know how to exercise, and it's like, well, really, it's kind of a newer concept. Like, you couldn't be a personal trainer, 40 years ago.
My wife and I came to the realization earlier this spring. It's like, we never rode our bikes once last year. They never came off the rack up in the garage. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I used to be a big bike rider. I'm like, oh no. Concerted effort. We're doing this.
Right. Yeah.
You got to make that concerted effort.
Yeah. More and more every year, it seems like, as life gets busier and more chaotic. And yeah, for sure.
So, best word of advice for people that don't know about gyms, because there's a little bit of a gym culture issue as well. You have to have the right fit.
That's exactly
What are your fitness goals, and does the facility I'm attending have the right fit?
Right. And I definitely think that if you're at all actually wanting my answer, that means you need some guidance. And so that means you need to find someone with knowledge. And so it's usually kind of going in and asking for that help. Don't just go in, sign up, and walk around, kind of
lost.
Yeah. And so invest in that initial trainer sessions, or invest in consults with people, or it's really just like kind of asking for that guidance. I think that's the first step. And that guidance will kind of tell you if that's the right fit or not, if they listen to your goals, if they, have some valid credentials behind them. That's another kind of scary thing in the health industry, and that we'll kind of talk about later probably too, is that a lot of people can pass a test on a couch and claim that they have that knowledge. But, so kind of just having high standards for what you're paying for and making sure that they have the knowledge and experience to.
Well, and I've done a lot of traveling over my career and joining different gyms, and I know the formula because, used to be an athlete. Walk in, it's like, okay, and you get this 2 or 3 free consultations with your gym membership, and I can't tell you how many of them are identical, and they've got nothing to do with me.
Right.
They really don't.
Yep.
And that's something people need to be aware of as well. We're talking with Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center, and Kevin Oberland, of course, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore, and Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center in the Bismarck Mandan area. And, one of the things I want to ask, because a lot of people get into the gym and try to go back, and my first actual gym experience outside of athletics and working out in that fashion was physical therapy. And physical therapy led into, and there's a fitness center here as well. And then I embraced that and went, we're off and running. A lot of people go back to the gym and they'll quit because of a slight injury. You bring something a little different to the table because you're also physical therapy as well. You've got a doctorate. Talk a little bit about marrying those and that extra component that really makes a big impact in a lot of people.
And the vision you had to, you really started early.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. Kevin just got a word in.
How about that? I'm here.
So like I had said, I went into that personal training side of things just to kind of keep myself accountable to exercising. from there, I really saw kind of the positive impact I could make on people and be the unpopular opinion of where the industry was really headed at that time, of kind of the crash dieting, you have to be a very wealthy person to afford personal training, or, just it was all headed in that direction, and that really bothered me. But then I also saw how many people hurt while they were exercising. And so I was gathering the knowledge in school of how to tell people to exercise and how to guide people to exercise, but then the pain part wasn't really part of that original education. And so with physical therapy school, that really let me kind of work through the pain side of things to then get them to move. And so the whole thought is that if you hurt, it's not fun to move. You're going to move less. You're going to get weaker and stiffer. So you're going to hurt more. So you're going to move less. And then we're in that cycle. And so I really just kind of came up with that belief of like, it all has to start with pain. I just kind of became pain focused. But the thing is that often pain is limiting the movement, but what's going to get rid of the pain is movement. And so it's just trying to kind of grab that wheel and turn it the other way. And
I've realized I'm there now, Kevin.
Yeah.
I really am.
Yeah, my wheels could use some turning.
Everybody got some WD-40?
And so that's in all age groups. That's in all, older, younger, male, female, it's just everyone. And to see how common pain is. And it's just the whole, my dad had bad knees. So they just have that, I'm destined for this.
But there's a difference between pain and being good sore. I call it good sore from a workout. And
some people don't.
Because you pushed yourself without crossing that line to the pain or injury side of things. And that's kind of that key spot. That's the sweet spot. That's where you want to be.
There's a lot of educating on that.
There is. Because somebody will walk into the gym. It's like, okay, I'm going to start back at the gym and see how much I can bench press. Bad idea.
Yeah.
That causes the pain.
And a lot of people will say no pain, no gain. And it's like, well, that's not true either. Everyone thinks of PT as the pain and torture, or they all have these little sayings what PT stands for. And it's actually your therapy shouldn't hurt. While you're doing therapy, it shouldn't hurt. Obviously, if you had a shoulder surgery, or there's pain involved in that. But if you're coming because your back hurts and I'm trying to make it feel better, that process should not hurt, And so that whole no pain, no gain, and, trying to differentiate between muscle soreness and actual joint or muscle strain and pain, that's a lot of educating that sometimes.
Because there's good sore.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
like, I know I had a good workout and I'm going to feel it. But then the other side of that is people don't properly recover from that good sore,
or cross-train enough,
or stretch.
Stretching.
Stretching.
What's that?
Yeah.
Well, okay, but great example. And always hated stretching. As I've gotten a little older, it becomes more important to do the stretching.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
I don't just hop on my bike now and go for,
and it doesn't need to be, sit miserable in a position for 1 minute. It's more of that dynamic thought, more mobility type of focuses, more muscle activation focuses.
Well,
and it's not
the cross-training side of it. Different exercises and they can warm you up for what that primary exercise is going to be. So it's not about sitting and doing the stretches per se. It's about the movement that warms you up to the movement you want to do.
So was there really a model of now being having a doctorate in physical therapy and proximal 50? Was there a model that you followed, or how did you think of that, or how did that come to be?
So I think a lot of it was I was learning things in PT school, and then before and after PT school, I'd be personal training. And that oftentimes that person I was personal training had back pain. And then, and it kind of developed from there. And at the same time, so actually America's kind of behind on it, where a lot of, especially like Australia and stuff, the physios, that's kind of what everyone else calls a PT. They were really getting more into that kind of fitness side of things. And so while that was all happening, I was also kind of living it myself and trying to implement it as I could, and saw that it was really helping. And And also just seeing the psychological side of that. If you lay there and I make you feel better, why would you ever go do exercises? You know?
Yeah, I'm feeling good right now. I don't want to get up.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm going to come to you forever, and I don't need to learn anything because you just make me better, and I'll just cling to you for life, you know?
Interesting point,
And
though.
so-
You brought up about Australia and other places around the globe, and Eastern medicine, and there's different mindsets and trains of thought when it comes into different pieces. How pigeonholed are we in this country because of the fitness industry, pharmaceutical industry? Oh, you're a little sore, take a pill for that. We have a different mindset than what a lot of other places around the world do.
Yeah.
We like taking shortcuts.
Right. And I feel like, so I'm going to be coming up on my 9th anniversary of business. And so I feel like 9 years ago, I felt like I was on such a steep hill of, there were some really extreme diet programs that were really booming in town at the time. There were really, I just felt like, oh my gosh, this feels like common sense to me, but why is nobody else doing it? And I really feel like I had been making a dent in that, or at least things were catching on and like society was catching on. And I feel like in the last 1 to 2 years, I'm right down at the bottom of that hill again with some of these.
Why is that?
Just more easy, quick fixes have come about and they've totally exploded. And it's just crazy to see how people flock to that. You know?
Okay, I've like the semaglutide fix.
Well, I was just going to
craze,
say
right?
that's
Yeah.
kind of the precipice for us getting together is our involvement in the GLP-1 market as pharmacists and the struggle with getting people to change their lifestyle, know how important
You and I have talked
muscle
about
mass
this
is.
ad nauseum. We're going to talk about this more when we come back. More with Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center, and Kevin Oberland of Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
News Talk Bismarck Mandan. Super Talk 1270. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Kevin Oberland of Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. We're talking with Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center. And Tanya, you've got multiple locations around the Bismarck Mandan community, and they all kind of have a little different nuance to them.
Yeah, they definitely have different vibes, which is kind of fun and gives people the place to find their comfort zone a little bit too. That wasn't really by design. I built a brand new building, so that creates its own vibe, whereas our downtown location is a rather old, amazing, awesome
Kind of down by
building.
Heedalls, but it's got its own vibe too.
Yeah,
It
love that building
fits
so
into-
much.
yeah.
So that creates its own vibe. But then people of all ages are drawn to the Divide location, and people of all ages are drawn to and
How many
to the
people
down-
hop around just depending on the mood they're in?
Not a ton.
Really?
Not a ton. Yeah. it's
Because I've
kinda-
always said this, you're not going to go to any gym that's not convenient to you.
Yes, and they're not that far apart, but
They're
boy,
not.
do people.
Yes.
and it's funny because on a random, the 3rd of July, we'll just have one location open. Whew. Does that really throw people off? It's the exact same equipment. It's the exact same layout of equipment.
But
just
people are creatures of habit.
We
They
are,
get
yeah.
into their routine.
Yeah,
They get into seeing the same person
Yes.
at
Yes.
7:50
Yes.
in the morning
Yeah.
that they
There's
see.
So
it's
maybe
the comfort.
10%
comfort.
will be bought back and forth, but it's very much, and it's just human nature. But.
So talk about the different services because there's
Yes.
some nuances to the
Yes.
different locations as well.
Yeah, and the whole Life Center name there is really because, and the name Proximal 50, which I don't think we even have time to talk about this, but it's about being a whole person, and so there's 5 parts to every person, or we've got our arms, legs, and our trunk, and that's really like an anatomical thing. But then also, we've got our mind, body, soul, spirit, heart. There's kind of 5 aspects to each person, and 0 means eternity. So We want to be closer, which is proximal, to being a whole person forever. That's the whole thought of proximal 50.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like Da Vinci, he was a big 5 guy, and I follow a lot of Da Vinci's stuff and just find him fascinating.
But when you're talking about health,
and that's
you
the
have
whole
to
part.
incorporate
Yes.
all of those components.
So to truly live up to our name, we really try to keep that part of it. And so, of course, we've got the fitness side, and that's kind of speaks for itself. The PT side is kind of melding that world of fitness into medical. To then we've got counseling services, getting the mind right. We've got nutrition services, because it's not just exercise or it's not just that. You got to implement both. You got to make sure you're fueling yourself. We're telling more people to eat more often than we're ever telling people to restrict. And then...
But you have to eat the right stuff.
Exactly. But then we've got a DEXA scan as well, which kind of gives you those valid numbers of body fat composition. And that gives you real numbers that aren't just tied to a scale. And so we're really trying to kind of grasp everyone from all sides.
Oh, I tell people this all the time. Throw away the scale.
Yes.
What matters is your percent body fat. That's the best indicator of how healthy you are.
Yep. And so it's kind of funny because sometimes we'll take the batteries out of our scale and just see how many people come around. And then we use it as an education thing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I never had the scale, and then people really requested it. Then I do it, but then I'll sometimes take it out.
Well, because the BMI is skewed.
I'm super obese.
I hate that. Yeah, because
being a taller person.
Well, yeah, they don't factor in the height side of it as well. And if you're 10% body fat and ripped up versus you're obese according to the BMI versus 20% body fat and not in great shape. But it's all relative.
Right. And the whole goal with proximal,
health is relative.
Yeah. And the whole goal with proximal is that you're not doing all of those things at once. Maybe in your 10-year time there, you're touching each of those aspects or, just learning so that then you can become that entire person forever, and that it's not a 6-week, 12-week, 6-month crazy program where you have to fork it all over right away and work on all that, because that's never going to work for you. It's too overwhelming. And so the idea is that, oh yeah, you did PT 3 years ago and now I see you with our dietitian or some of that.
How many people get off track because we tend to focus, especially when we're going to that gym setting, we tend to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Which you need to. If you're a gym rat, it's like, oh, I'm doing, I want big arms. So you're going to lift arms like crazy. And then you're going to get sore. And how many people focus in on just the physical side of things and they don't look at that bigger picture?
So many.
Yeah. And that's what you need to look at is the mental health and the physical and the nutrition and all the different pieces, because they all interact with one another. Kevin and I talk about this all the time. On every system of the body interacts with other systems of the body. Health's the same way.
Yes. And so people who are, beating their head against a wall because they're not losing weight in the gym, so then they're going to go into that quick fix type of route, which is why me and Kevin are together right now. But how much are you sleeping at night? What's your stress level? How much are you... It's all those other questions, and those are things that we try to really bring in the conversation and try to educate our personal trainers on, and that we're all very much on the same page and having those same conversations and encouraging those same concepts. Because if you're waking up at 5 a.m. but you didn't go to bed till midnight and you have a really stressful day, you might be better off just getting more sleep for a while. That workout might be actually hindering you rather than helping you. And for us to actually advocate and be like, if you need to freeze your membership for a while and just get these things on base, we're going to encourage that. Or, we're not going to, or let's use your personal training sessions with the counselor. They're all interchangeable, and so it's not that, oh, you have to do this because you committed to a package. Nope, it's all interchangeable. Each session is the same price, no matter who you see. Obviously not physical therapy because that's insurance-based, but it's just as we're having those conversations, everyone's kind of trained on what those triggers are of, I'm gonna cross promote almost, and I'm gonna send you over to this person.
It's interesting to hear that, because part of the frustration in our industry is people come in and they want help and they want to buy a supplement, and I'm thinking, well, they need way more help than just taking something. So we try to dig into it a little bit, and people then start to put up barriers because they don't want to. I always ask people, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Because that's a telltale thing for us. And
what's breakfast?
And you'd be amazed at what we hear. And then it's like, I don't really want to sell you something because it's going to fail, and then it's just,
and you'll get blamed for it anyway.
It just doesn't look like we know what we're doing. So I think our introduction to each other and relationship just expands on our ability to really refer people and help people in this.
And I think knowing, okay, I lost a sale in that moment, or, something like that, it's, I'll see you in 5 years when you're ready for this change. And it was really hard to stick to that in those first couple of years.
I'm sure.
I really feel like I didn't see that until year 3, where I was like, these people are walking away because they're not seeing results, because they're not going to for 6 to 9 months. If you're doing what we're encouraging, you're going to gain weight before you lose it,
and most people that walk into the gym with the attitude that, okay, I'm going to the gym because I need to lose weight, and some fad diet usually comes along with that, or
and just
starvation, or
so we are absolutely the last resort, and I am A-okay with that, and I'm so glad that I did stick to my guns on that, because those people have now come back. They've done 5 more things since they were last here, but they've come back and they're actually ready. So now we can make that change instead of meeting them when they weren't ready.
Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center in Bismarck, and Kevin Oberland of Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Kevin Oberland of Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. And we're talking with Tanya Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center. Okay, so we're talking a little bit about shortcuts and people when they're ready, and people that walk into the pharmacy and they want that quick fix. I'm not dealing with things. And that's kind of where you and I have had the conversation about the semaglutides and that phase, that fad, that craze that's going on, right? Insane.
Yeah.
And we've had the discussion a lot that, okay, people like that quick fix and they'll do something for that quick fix, but they don't understand that you still need the lifestyle change.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing when it comes to health, if you're in a bad place, you need a lifestyle change. You need that reset. Same with this shortcut, where it has some benefits for people, but you have to do the lifestyle change that comes along with it. You just don't walk in, because when you talk about the semaglutides and losing weight, okay, great, but what's the weight you're losing? And quite often it's muscle mass.
I think one of the problems with the GLP-1s is it works. People lose weight, but
is it the right weight?
Well, that's just it. I just don't think there's enough education.
If you're not working out at the same time in the right fashion, you're losing the wrong weight.
Or on the dispensing side, because these are prescription-driven drugs, and they're coming through all sorts of media. I mean, it is just crazy what I'm reading of how people are getting these through virtual interactions with prescribers, and answer 5 questions, and then a semaglutide shows up at their door. And then they're in charge of how much they're injecting. There's a dosage on it, but we're hearing stories of people increasing the amount they're using without professional guidance to increase the rapidity of their weight loss.
If I got a little bit of help, I can do it faster.
Right.
I got a wedding coming up.
Right.
I got this.
But there's nobody in their ear teaching them about, so the drug slows down your gastric emptying time so you feel full faster. And if you don't change what you eat, suddenly you're eating empty calories and you're full, so you don't get any good food at all. You're going to start to lose muscle mass. If the drug makes you ill and you have to go off it, the chance of weight loss coming back can be a real rebound. And there's studies showing that sometimes the lipid cells are actually larger after using these drugs. So I think, like Tana said, it's the fad things that she battled for years, and now I think we're facing a behemoth of a fad. So, and it's not going anyplace.
So, Tana, is this another fad, or does it have a place in healthcare, in your opinion?
Well, I'll take that. Because I think there's a population of people who have some morbidity issues that it probably helps. But
if I'm morbidly obese, what's the upside versus the downside? So, hey, am I taking stress off my heart by losing 150 pounds versus...
So statistically, there's some data out there that shows that it does decrease some of the cardiovascular risks, some of the joint risks when somebody's morbidly obese. But I think it really needs to be done with the idea that this is a jump start to get me to a comfortable weight so that the lifestyle changes that I'm taught lead me down a better path. And that's kind of through Health Now and Mick in our building. He talked to me about Tana knowing her in Proximal, and Jeff, one of our pharmacists, knew of it. And it just, to me, it just seemed like, this is somebody that we really need to utilize and have a relationship with so we're comfortable steering, because I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a dietitian. I'm a pharmacist.
But you did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah. It comes back to the idea that I think it really takes a village for these type of patients.
But that ties back into you and I talk about delivery method all the time, dosage and stuff. And that comes back to, okay, rather than the injectable, the under the tongue. And
so there's some options that are being developed. And, now Ozempic was the catch. That's a diabetic drug. But these...
And now there's a shortage for diabetics trying to get their meds.
Right, but the pharmaceutical people aren't stupid. They're really smart. So suddenly we have Wegovy, which is the same drug, but it's FDA approved for weight loss. So there's an industry that's suddenly been created, which is huge. And they're able to market their drugs for weight loss.
And that comes back to the question I asked, too, about, the mindset we have in this country versus in other places around the world that, well, okay, what's the shortcut?
Yeah, to me, obviously, this whole scenario is scary. But to me, I feel just so much more sadness about it because there's been a lot of people that I've put years into. Yeah. And you see the progress they're making. You see it. They don't see it because they're with themselves all the time. But you see it, of like, you've never been a consistent gym member ever, and you've been coming for a year. Like, that's huge, or those things.
That's a win.
But then you literally see the arm of that grab them and pull them. They just get sucked into it because that little glimmer of easy hope just pulls them. And to me, that's like devastating. And so it's more so the sadness of that makes me angry and want to fight it.
But it becomes more of a glamour thing. I look good, but am I healthy?
Right, and they don't care.
No,
that's the sadness. Is they don't think that's going to get. They know. Everyone knows that this isn't a healthy route to go.
I knew we needed some help when we followed up with a patient using our sublingual semaglutide prescription. And one of my staff followed up with her, and they forwarded the call to me because she was mad because she gained 12 pounds. Well, the drug doesn't make you gain weight.
No.
And I had to get off my politically correct chair and challenge her. Did you listen to anything we talked about with your changes? I just don't understand why I've gained 12 pounds. Well, then I don't think you're the right person for us to try to help because you're just not doing this for the right reason. You're doing it for the right reason, but you're not embracing the right way to do it.
I tell you what, I'm going to hold you over the break, and I want to come back and talk about, is there a place for this in conjunction with healthcare? Because like I said, you and I have talked about, Kev, it's a piece, not necessarily the whole solution, and people are looking at it as a whole solution, and that's not necessarily the healthiest path to go down. This is Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Without apology, The Regular Joe Show with Joe Gigante. Weekday evenings at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. Also, Tana from Tana Trotter Proximal 50 Life Center with us here. And, okay, we're going to talk about the semaglutide side of stuff, focus in on this last segment because I wanted to carry you over for that. Does it have a role in healthcare when you're talking about people who are morbidly obese, or does it fit into the lifestyle changes that people need to make? Because it's not a shortcut. Nothing's a shortcut. Nothing should be a shortcut. You got to put the work in.
So my hope with these drugs is that they're used short term. You know, there's the idea that people can start these and just use them forever to maintain their weight.
Yeah, no.
And you know, we don't find out about the risk of drug therapy sometimes on FDA-approved drugs until a majority of the population is exposed to them, and then we see the dark side of this. And
and we've seen a little bit of it with the semaglutides in that when you have muscle loss, muscle helps burn fat, and if you're losing muscle, are you getting ahead? But okay, your heart's a muscle.
Yeah.
Are you losing muscle mass there? There's a lot that people just don't understand about this.
But my hope is if people want to go down that path, that we might be able to guide them with an alternative delivery system, going slower. But the idea is that you make the necessary changes with all the people that we're trying to pull into this circle to help you, that's not your weight loss drug. It's the precipice to get you to a point where you've made the necessary lifestyle changes so you can maintain that without having to use that drug. And we're hearing of people going on and off of these things. You know, they're cycling on and cycling off.
I got a wedding coming up. I got to hop on it.
Yeah. Well, and some of the side effects that they're having. I mean, they can't leave their house because they're in the bathroom the entire time, or they're, they just feel awful on these things.
And, we're hearing stories that, the first thing that we ask people is, if you get some GI disturbance or nausea, please report that, because that's not right. That shouldn't be happening. But we're hearing reports that people like that nausea because then they're not eating. I'm like, really?
So sad. It's so sad.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think your term that it is, I think it is sad. I think we're being led down this path driven by dollars, to be honest. So I just hope that a small community like us can really do part to help people that really want to do it right.
Right.
So what should the process be? I mean, okay, first of all, you need to make the lifestyle changes for good health on your own, not without the crutch. And I'm going to kind of lump it into fad diets at the moment included. So what's the process, Tana, that people need to make a healthy choice and go, I need to get healthy. I need to have a little bit of a lifestyle change.
Right.
I need to do better in some certain areas, and then start looking at some alternatives. But if you're not seeing, I mean, what's the process look like?
I think my answer has honestly changed in the last 2 years. What I would have said is come to Proximal and let's start doing some of this. But life is getting more chaotic for people. There, I used to be like, oh, you didn't have time? Well, how many episodes on Netflix did you watch last night? Or, there used to be still time, but now I just feel like time is even becoming less, and it's getting harder to guide some of my people who are really do have good intentions. They're not trying to find the quick fix.
I used to have a rule that I didn't watch TV unless I sat on my recumbent bike and pedaled while watching TV. I don't watch TV anymore. Right. I don't have time.
Yeah, and I just think this whole high cortisol for a long duration of time, our adrenals are just drained, insulin resistance. I just feel like I'm not having the same success with some of those people who, kids are in middle school and they've just been on go forever. And I think that's what's making me so excited about kind of this being part of this team is having Mick with Health Now. Like, he can look at some of those things. And while you guys are looking at those things, we are absolutely going to keep working on some of this other stuff at Proximal. But exercise and diet to truly change adrenals, cortisol, insulin stuff, that takes a long time of a lot of dedicated, perfect work, and being realistic about that.
And balancing some of the other hormones,
yes,
which, Mick and I work together closely on that for people.
And I have been feeling more restricted on that lately. I just feel like I'm trying to guide you. I'm telling you things to go ask your doctor. It's not really happening.
Yeah.
Like a lot of sticky notes get sent out with people, ask for this, send a message on this, and it doesn't happen. And so to kind of get my foot in the door with people who can make that happen has been really exciting for me.
Okay, so what's the process look like? 'Cause we got a couple minutes here, and I wanted to get into some of the expansion of Proximal as well, because you've got some exciting stuff going on, which, now we're going to have you back.
Oh, darn.
But what's the process look like? Does it start with you, Kevin, or does it start at Proximal?
I think
does it
either
start
way.
with the healthcare provider? Where does...
I don't think it matters where it starts, but it has to start with the individual. They have to really come to the mindset that I need some help. I've heard that Dakota Pharmacy and Precision Labs has this sublingual form of the GLP-1s, so we see them first. But we're going to try to embrace that with our little community here. They may see Mick first. Mick may refer them to us, or we'll work together to try to create some hormone balance. Then he's going to send them to Tana's team at Proximal 50 Life Center. So I don't think it matters where they start.
It's kind of like
just
Mick's that middle person where I wouldn't send people to Kevin. I send people to Mick that then sends people. And it's kind of just this triangle that can go either. And they need to travel around that triangle. It doesn't matter what direction they're going or anything, but you need to touch all points of that triangle.
Takes a village.
So the triad of care, which in compounding is pharmacist, prescriber, patient working together, the patient part of that now includes Tana's team at Proximal 50, because it's that patient component. Because Mick can be the prescriber, we're the pharmacy, and then they become part of the patient component of that triad of care.
Always comes back to the triad of care.
It really does. I think it's the foundation.
And it always starts with you as the patient.
As your own advocate.
You have to be your best advocate. And that's whether it's the healthcare side of stuff, it's personal fitness, all those pieces.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just self-reflection, too, of like, what are your goals? Why do you want that? And if any of that is superficial or involves looks, don't call us.
Yeah.
It's about being healthy.
Yeah, it's about your function.
Just
it's about your
being
joy.
healthy and making some good choices so you can age gracefully, right, Kev?
That's right. As the oldest one in the room, that's what I'm looking for.
Some days I feel like I'm not that far behind you. Tana, thanks for coming in.
Thanks
we'll
for having me.
back.
Enjoyed
This
this.
is
great.
some exciting stuff. Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. Tana Trotter, owner of Proximal 50 Life Center. Tana, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
You can walk in. You can call. We're all geared up to guide you based on certain questions. And if you say pain, you'll see me. If you say help, you'll see someone else. It just depends.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
And of course, Kev, you've got some great resources.
Yeah.
So
come to our website, check out our YouTube channel, Serenity University. A lot of good videos on there, including some on the GLP-1s and our thoughts on that. So
this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town. My name is Jason Spees. We're going to get right back to our interview with Mark Fries, attorney for Vogel Law, talking about Measure 5. It's recreational cannabis, which goes before the voters in November.
When I think about the progression that North Dakota's made, I think back to, I'll just myself. The first time I tried marijuana, I was 28 years old. And I'm not kidding you. The first thing I said when I smoked was, why would anyone drink? And my alcohol consumption went down about 90% after I took that first puff. And when I got cancer, the doctors were going to give me oxycodone. And I took one pill. And up till then, I had really never even taken an aspirin. And this was 2019, 18, when I had this cancer. And I took one pill and I still felt nauseous. I still felt pain, but I could not complete a thought in my head. And so I didn't take any painkillers after that. I did use Gorilla Glue, which is cannabis, and actually I could eat. I didn't feel any nausea. And so I always keep some on hand. I live in Minnesota now, and I do keep a little bit of Gorilla Glue as medicine because stage 4 cancer survivor. So I do have some pain still. I'm missing 9 inches of my colon. If I have dairy, there's like a football down in there. So then I'll use that, and it'll very much help. I remember Richard Wardner, who is a longtime North Dakota legislator who was very much against cannabis and marijuana. And there was a woman in her 70s or 80s that testified, and she talked about how, and she was in Western North Dakota, and she talked about how her daughter went to Colorado and got some, and she hid under her kitchen table out in rural North Dakota and smoked it. And Richard Wardner changed his mind. And I never thought I'd see the day where that type of thing, because he understood. It was not a young punk smoking on the street corner. So there are legitimate medicinal uses for this. As somebody who's been through it, I understand that. But at the same time, there are people that abuse it. There are people that'll drive and smoke and those types of things. Are there going to be any legal changes that come after this? Do you anticipate or talk to me a little bit about law enforcement and how they are? Look, you're a former law enforcement officer. You've dealt with drinking and driving, and you've dealt with marijuana. So talk to me a little bit about the law enforcement side of it.
I think that the comparison between marijuana use and alcohol use and marijuana use and OxyContin or oxycodone or fentanyl it is a good one to make. There is, in the history of the world, not a single reported overdose death from marijuana use. Daily, in North Dakota, people are dying from overdoses of alcohol. Drunk drivers pose a very serious risk to people on our highway, and impaired drivers who are impaired by prescription drugs or non-prescription illicit drugs pose an equal danger, right? Our law enforcement in North Dakota is very well trained. They're able to detect impairment, whether that impairment derives from alcohol or whether it derives from the use of other controlled substances. I would never publicly support or privately support the notion that somebody should drive in an impaired condition, no matter the substance. So this measure is not an endorsement on impaired driving, but I do agree with your suggestion, Jason, that when you compare this substance to alcohol, I think every law enforcement officer who has worked on the streets will tell you people who are impaired by marijuana are much easier to deal with than people who are impaired with alcohol. And then the flip side of that coin is I personally wonder how many fentanyl overdose deaths we would have, how many people we would have that would have survived the methamphetamine crisis that we've gone through if this were available, if cannabis were available in a lawful form. Because people who use some of those substances are looking either to control a medical condition or a psychological or psychiatric condition. And if marijuana could have reduced the effects that were causing them or the cravings that were causing them to go to fentanyl, would some of those folks still be here? I have a tendency to think that they would.
When we talk about the medicinal side of things, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, medicinal. And even Minnesota, I think, is recreational, but it's still medicinal, except in Mahnomen and down one of the reservations outside of Minneapolis. South Dakota, I believe, passed recreational, but they changed it within the state legislature, too, to kick the can, so to speak. One of the issues about medicinal is the doctors signing the okay. There is a federal law that kind of prohibits, at least the last I checked, I haven't checked in a while. There was a federal law that really scared doctors away from doing that. I know after I had my first cancer bout, I couldn't find a doctor in Minnesota or North Dakota to write me a prescription. Next Friday, actually, I'm having a meeting at one of these Zoom meetings where doctor comes in with sandals and beads in the background. He's going to give me the okay or so. I'm just joking, but I am going to have a telemedicine to where I've been pre-approved already based on my cancer and everything else that apparently I'm going to get that. Talk to me a little bit about the doctors and what is happening with that, because it's not as easy to get a medicinal card as it seems, but maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't checked in a while.
Let me hit the South Dakota history first. You're right about that, Jason. South Dakota passed a ballot measure, approved recreational cannabis use. The South Dakota Supreme Court overturned it, holding that it violated the single subject rule for an initiated measure under South Dakota law. They came back last time, and there's another ballot measure that didn't pass. Currently, they've approved a ballot measure for 2024. So just like North Dakota, South Dakota is going to be addressing this again. You're absolutely right about the problems with the medicinal marijuana program. It's not only that doctors are reluctant to prescribe. There are certain insurers that will not provide coverage under certain circumstances. Veterans who are working through the Veterans Administration program, and Veterans Administration hospitals are not able to get medicinal use marijuana because of protocols by the federal government in that program. There are all sorts of obstacles to getting medical marijuana authorization, filling the prescriptions, and being able to use them. Some of the conditions that you've outlined, having gone through stage 4 cancer, having dealt with chemotherapy and radiation, firsthand the benefits of medicinal marijuana. Other people that have suffered from PTSD, psychological ailments, people who have certain eye problems, seizure disorders. There's all sorts of people who have found remarkable success to treating their ailments because of medicinal use marijuana. And some of my fellow committee members and people who are helping support the campaign here are supporting it because they've had difficulty with a friend or a family member obtaining medicinal use marijuana under existing protocols. So you're absolutely right. This will hopefully open up the door for the availability for medical use cannabis for those who could not otherwise obtain it.
Once again, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought for a moment or two. We're going to take a brief pause. Mark Fries is our guest, attorney for Vogel Law. Measure 5, recreational cannabis is the topic. My name is Jason Spiess, and you're listening to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town.
To Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town. My name is Jason Spiess, sitting in for Steve Bakken. Mark Fries is our guest. We're talking about Measure 5. It's going to appear on the November ballot. It's recreational cannabis. Mark Fries, former law enforcement, current attorney. Let's get right back to our interview. Mr. Mark Fries.
If somebody is traveling across state lines, Fargo-Moorhead, Wahpeton, Breckenridge, East Grand Forks, I mean, we can go to the south or go to the west side of the state and Beach, Montana, Beach, North Dakota, and Glendive, Montana. What's the law say on that if you're in a neighboring state? I know that if somebody's going to drive a few ounces from Colorado to North Dakota, they're in trouble. They're going to be in trouble for that. Does the law say anything about that, or is that just, hey, man, you better stay in the state?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Jason. Unless you have medical authorization and you're possessing within that authorization limit, you're not able to bring marijuana from Minnesota into North Dakota. And if you have no medical authorization and you go into Minnesota and bring marijuana back here, you're committing a crime, right? So it's very important that people understand this is not going to open up the door to allow people to come and go and take marijuana across the border and transport it all around. It's not doing that at all, right? The law of the jurisdiction in which you're passing through is going to control whether you can possess it or not, and whether you have that medical authorization is going to influence whether you're able to possess it as well.
I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but there are a lot of legalese still that is being ironed out. Back in 2015, the Bakken oil fields out in western North Dakota went through a downturn, and I had a media brand, still do, called The Crude Life, and I had to figure out some new revenue streams. So I tried to do some media work, some writing for the healthcare industry, the drone UAS industry, And I put out some feelers in the cannabis industry as well, just because I saw the emergence of it. And what I found out was the drone UAS industry was very controlled. And then I found out the healthcare industry was extremely controlled as far as trying to get your inwards there. The cannabis industry allowed me to write some articles. So I did a political election guide overview. I wrote a couple articles for about 3 different national cannabis publications, High Times, Marijuana Venture Magazine. So I interviewed the very first dispensary in the United States, Choice Organics in Fort Collins, Colorado. I interviewed the very first transfer of a medicinal dispensary to a recreational in Colorado as well, Smokies. And then I talked to somebody who had the first approval from the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, to allow electronic currency. Now, that's a big deal right there, because we're talking about, the federal laws involved here. In North Dakota, are you going to be able to use your debit card, or are you going to have to use the ATM? How's the money exchange going to work?
A lot of that's going to depend on what happens at the federal level. You may be aware that the federal government is currently proposing a reclassification of marijuana from cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And to kind of explain that to your listeners, Jason, Schedule 1, the federal government and all states classify controlled substances into schedules. Schedule 1 controlled substances are those that have a high potential for abuse with no accepted medical use. This is typically things that you'll see like LSD, MDMA, really, really hard drugs. Marijuana has historically been classified as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. And anyone with any modicum of honesty is going to tell you that's been wrong, because you know personally how marijuana has helped you with your medical needs, and thousands of people across the country do as well. So there's currently a movement afoot to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule 3 controlled substance. That's one that doesn't have much of a potential for abuse. It does have scientific and medical purposes that can be used. If that happens, the restrictions on the money, the banks, those types of things will be revised. But if the federal government doesn't revise the scheduling under federal law, there are still going to be the impediments that we've been dealing with some of the medicinal program, and some of the other states all of the other states that have legalized adult use have been dealing with.
One of the interesting things for me is that this is a legitimate grassroots effort, no pun intended. But what I mean by that is it's very similar to Prohibition, because Prohibition started at the state's level. And then finally, the federal government did the prohibition. And then reversal, same thing happened, reversal. This seems very similar to that, to where eventually enough states get on board with it to where the federal government says, well, now we look stupid. We better just pass this law. Talk to me a little bit about that, because there seems to be a tipping point coming.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And that's a big reason that a lot of the proponents of this measure are involved in it. We want to do this in a way that makes sense for North Dakota. We don't want this big push. We don't want things to turn over and have the floodgates open. I don't want to walk to a concert, an outdoor concert, and smell somebody smoking marijuana. This measure would not allow that. If the floodgates open and we get some type of measure passed down the road that doesn't have the conservative restrictions that we've included here, the types of things that I want to see as a lifelong North Dakota resident are not going to exist in that measure. But you're absolutely right. If you study the history of prohibition, and if you study the history of scheduling marijuana as a Schedule 1 controlled substance, really what had happened is we've been sold a bill of goods. After prohibition ended, we had all sorts of regulatory officials, federal law enforcement officers, and agencies that were developed to control and enforce prohibition standards. They were really going to be out of work. So they picked this naturally occurring weed that people, mostly minorities at that time, were using, and they classified it as a Schedule 1 controlled substance, and then began using the enforcement mechanisms that they had used. And for years and years and years, our government has been telling us there is no medical, no scientific purpose, that this is as dangerous as LSD, while openly we're seeing our friends and family members dying from alcohol overdoses and alcoholism. We're not seeing the same thing with marijuana. So, yes, our government needs to get honest with us. And as states, we need to move our federal government toward recognition of the things that they have done in the past and doing this in a smarter way.
Hold that thought. Mark Fries, Vogel Law Firm. We're talking about Measure 5 recreational cannabis, going to go before the people in November. My name is Jason Spees, and this is Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town.
1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town. My name is Jason Spees, sitting in for Steve Bakken. One more segment to go with Mark Fries. He's an attorney with Vogel Law. He's talking about Measure 5, recreational cannabis, former law enforcement officer, current attorney, educating the public on the ins and the outs coming up in November. Before the people, recreational cannabis, folks. Let's get right back to our interview with Mr. Mark Fries.
Should point out, too, is that one of the things, looking back at the history, Atlanta, Georgia was one of the first prohibition city states, if you will, because for a lot of reasons, but Coca-Cola used to be in wine. And then after Prohibition, they made it basically into Coca-Cola with cocaine. Cocaine was in the original Coca-Cola, if you will. And Prohibition's actually what created the soft drink. When I take a look at a lot of what's happened since then, alcohol does have a natural limit. And it wasn't until some of the modern technology that allowed us to have these very big and deep proofs, if you will. Like the modern alcohol is not the way nature's intended. So innovation in science has really changed alcohol, and we can see some of the issues that have come from it. I do see some similarities with cannabis and marijuana. Some of the new technology does allow for some pretty stiff gummies, some pretty stiff concentrates. Walk through once again what those limits are within the state of North Dakota, and talk a little bit about, from your law enforcement side, what your experience has been on that.
Well, I very much agree with you. It's dangerous because, scientists are tinkering with this stuff all the time. And the potency of cannabis is now being scientifically enhanced, and it's creating circumstances that we should all be concerned if cannabis is coming into North Dakota through illicit channels rather than regulated from seed to sale. So one of the big things this measure will do is provide us assurances that the cannabis that's being sold and used to adults in the light of day is going to be scientifically safe. It's not going to be manipulated. It's not going to be pushing concentration levels through the roof that it's creating more danger. But I'm certainly not a scientist. I can't tell you nanograms per milliliter of what's safe or those types of things. What I can tell you is that this approach is going to be conservative. And again, it's going to be possession of small amounts of marijuana, 1 ounce or less of flower, 4 grams or less of concentrate, 1,500 milligrams or less of cannabinoid products, and then 300 milligrams or less in an edible form. And every one of those forms are going to be from producers who are tested, regulated, and monitored. I don't support use by those under the age of 21. I don't intend to use myself, but I certainly, as a matter of policy, much prefer having people who want to use marijuana, using marijuana that's safe and has been tested and is subject to oversight.
One of the things that Measure 5 tried to do before, back when it was the medicinal, was they tried to allow small towns or, someone to sell it, basically, become a local pharmacy, if you will. And that actually did make sense because, in Bottineau, North Dakota, there might have been 12 total people that maybe would be able to qualify for medicinal marijuana. So to have somebody locally within the city working with the local law enforcement, inventory checks by the sheriff, et cetera, made sense to me, rather than drive to Fargo, rather than drive to Bismarck. I think back then there was only going to be 2 or 3 total dispensaries in the state. Is there anything in the law that will allow something like that, or is that kind of the reason for the home grow?
Yes, there are kind of guide rails that are contained in the ballot measure, restricting the number of locations that can sell, the places, the nature of the sales, those types of things. I mean, we don't want a measure that's going to allow a cannabis shop on every corner. So the state will limit it. If this passes, we're going to see if those limits are appropriate, whether they should be expanded. This is one of those areas, Jason, where the legislature's input will be helpful. Should we authorize more? There's nothing in this measure that's going to force municipalities to do that. So assume Carpio wants to become the cannabis capital of North Dakota. They're free to do so. If Fargo wants to opt out, saying we don't want to authorize the sale of cannabis within the corporate limits of Fargo, they're authorized to do that. And then the state will have oversight over the number and the regulation and the monitoring of those entities that are approved to sell.
That happens, by the way. If you go to Colorado, there's still counties and cities that don't allow it. Grand Junction, Colorado, they don't allow dispensaries in the city. It's really funny because you go outside of town, there's like 4 of them right on the outskirts of town on some frontage road in the middle of nowhere. And Loveland, Colorado, for a long time had a ban as well. So there are opportunities and there are communities that probably in North Dakota will not allow it. What's the process going to look? Oh, go ahead.
And that's perfectly acceptable. That's what we want, right? Again, a big part of this measure for many on the committee is, look, we want to do this in a way that fits North Dakota, and that preservation of a local determination as to whether this is going to be authorized is really central to how North Dakota operates. I'd much rather have this than some out-of-state entity with an interest in their own interest coming into North Dakota and forcing something down our throat after we're one of the last ones. And look, we're going to be an island here. Canada has recreational use marijuana. Montana has recreational use marijuana. Minnesota has recreational use marijuana. And in 2024, the voters in South Dakota are going to be voting on recreational use marijuana after having previously passed it. So we're going to be alone here. I think you're right. Our voters at some point are going to say, like me, I don't intend on using it, but I don't want tax dollars going to other states for things that are going to be consumed in North Dakota.
Do you know where the taxes are going to go?
They're going to go to the general fund and they'll be appropriated as the legislature deems fit. And they'll hopefully reduce my property taxes.
Yeah, I thought it'd go to some DARE program or something like that. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think people should know about? And it's on the November election, correct?
Correct.
Anything that we left out or anything that you think people should know about this particular measure that is of importance?
My advice is get educated. Take a look at it. Read the studies. There's a ton of information available out there. The website for the committee is available for your listeners to look at as well. There are research articles everywhere. As I mentioned to you, Jason, my view on this has changed, not because I've changed, but because I've studied it and researched it. And the time is now. I think we're ready. Mark
Fries with Vogel Law. Hey, thanks for your time today.
Hey, pleasure meeting you. Thanks for the invitation, Jason.
Thank you, Mark Fries, attorney for Vogel Law. Measure 5 on the ballot in November, recreational cannabis. My name is Jason Spiess, sitting in for Steve Bach, and I'm back tomorrow, folks. Just a heads up, you're listening to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.